Three, two, one.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Deep Blinkers. I'm Drew Grant, this time joined with my co-host Eric Rodriguez, Nerd Chronic, and we have with us a really special guest, someone I'm very excited to have on. She's been a friend of mine for a long time. She's the author of How to Be Alone and You Will Meet Your People, as well as the host of an upcoming show here in LA of Tinder Live, one of my favorite shows of all time. She was also the sex editor of Cosmo. It's Lane Moore. Hi, Lane.
Hi, so nice to be here. Thank you for that wonderful intro.
I was saying a little bit before we got on, Eric, that your parents actually got you a copy of You Will Find Your People last Christmas, and then we had to go out and get another copy because we left ours at home.
Yeah, to prep for this,
so
yeah.
Cool. I love your parents, like immediately. I don't know. I don't know them. I don't want to say that, but I'm like, that's very cute.
Yeah. I mean, I had had my eye on the book for a while, obviously because of my experience in, the online space and just like kind of what that meant, like just the title, really grabs you right away. And so I was really interested to kind of, like peel that back and see what that's all about.
Yeah, I'm so glad. That also makes me feel really good because there were people who tried to suggest other titles, and I was like, no, this is the title. Sometimes you have to push back. Like other people have ideas that you're just like, please do not make it that. Please do not make it that. So whenever people are like, yeah, the title grabbed me, I loved it. I'm like, I know, I was right. So it's just nice, gratifying.
It's great to be able to have that sort of sway in the publishing industry. I mean, your first book, How to Be Alone, was also just one of the most moving books I've ever read. And again, coming from a place of like, just coming from a place of like, oh my God, I know this person and I had no idea of the context of you and your family, and also just the idea that you were one of the first friends I had that had actually written a book like that
Yeah.
it was so like, yeah, it was like pretty cool. And to watch you kind of transition from doing this, I thought of you when I first met you, I think of as this editorial kind of person working in magazines, and then watching you transition into this online space and watching you do Tinder Live and all your music. It's just been really cool to watch your journey. It's been awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about how you decided to make that move from publishing or like magazine publishing to online?
It's so funny because it's so funny how like other people see you and what like the internal story was, because I never intended, I don't think I really thought in any kind of, I guess what I'll say is it was not a conscious move to like be in magazines and stuff like that at all.
Okay.
So it was like, no, I know, right? So I'm just like, oh, really? Is that like how I totally get why that is. So really the story is, growing up as a kid, I wanted to be an actor and writer, and I wanted to be a comedian. I wanted to be a musician. And so, when I moved to New York and I was like, I was writing for The Onion, but like I didn't get a byline. So like I'm writing all these stories that are like, I was the only woman on staff, dark time. That's not a great thing to be. And so like I'm trying to get these like really cool, I'm like making stories in The Onion that are like feminist, and like I'm trying to get queer stories in there, body positive stories. I'm like talking about stuff like domestic violence that like was way before like reductors didn't exist, none of this stuff existed. But I'm not getting a byline, so I'm not getting any credit and I'm not getting any following from it, and I'm also not really getting paid. So it was kind of like, it just kind of was a complicated like first experience because I wanted to be a comedian, I wanted to be a comedy writer, and it like seemed like it should have been the perfect first job, but it was like tricky in that way because it didn't offer like the audience, the exposure, the credit, or like the stability that I really needed. And so then, I was still doing stand up at the time, and I was like playing with my band. It was Romance, and like I was doing all this stuff and like making music privately. And I say privately because it's like, I think for a while when I was doing comedy and, you're doing like stuff for The Onion in these like funny places, and I was doing like, stuff for McSweeney's and all these other little places, and not little places, big places, but I was doing these things, and I kind of felt like at the time, at the very start, I felt like I had to like keep music a secret or something, where it was like people wouldn't take you as seriously or something, even though like that had always been the dream, was to like be a multi-hyphenate. That's because I loved all these things equally. And I just always saw that future. And like, I remember, just like you see it, it's funny because like now we see more and more examples of that. And, I started to kind of tell people, like when Carrie Brownstein and came along, I was like, it's like that. Like you feel like you have to like explain why you're like this and why your whole life isn't one thing. But then I kind of like, broke out of that a little bit more, and then, wrote for wrote for other comedy places and was like freelancing. And I was just like, okay, music is definitely not gonna like pay my bills full time. That's rough. Stand up, I was like lucky if I got paid anything. And if you don't have a super wealthy family, you can't, it's very hard to like just do this one thing. And so I saw the sex editor position come up at Cosmo, and I was like, well, like, so I had just created Tinder Live a couple months before that. And I was like really excited about that because I had my own show, and it was like, I guess for people who have never seen Tinder Live, I'll give you like a little explanation of what it is. So I had this idea not long after Tinder like first came out, where I was like, immediately as soon as I like started swiping, I was like, oh, this is a comedy show where we swipe through like these crazy men's profiles, and like the audience can vote whether we swipe right or left. I'll like make jokes about them. We can have guests, we can have a panel, people can like weigh in, and like this will be so cool. And like immediately that night, wrote up a pitch for the show, pitched it to a local venue, had it up really fast, and it was like immediately started like selling out. And it was the first time something like that had happened for me, where it wasn't this like kind of uphill battle, kind of like, I don't know, I'm making good work and it's cool, but like, I can't find a space for it, or I'm not getting paid for it, or like the stuff that so many artists go through. And that was like, oh, I really have something, and like this thing that's like, I really love doing in this way. And then, so when that came up, I was like, oh, okay, so there's a couple things. I have this thing I'm doing with this comedy show that I think kind of lends, it's like I'm talking about relationships and dating and sex and stuff so much anyway. And I'd written freelance for a couple places in that vein. And I was like, I've always been interested in this, and this could really make sense. But then I think one of the things that I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be very clear that I don't want this job unless I can make this super feminist, super like talk about mental health, talk about LGBTQ shit, which was like really not happening at all in media at that time. I'm sure you remember, but like it really wasn't. And it wasn't even that long ago, but like it really was not happening. And I was like, I want to like radicalize this as much as I possibly can. That's the only way this will be interesting for me. I don't want to write like 50 ways to fucking, give him the best blowjob of his life. I don't give a shit. I want to write, I want to talk about suicidal ideation while I'm talking about like funny boob stuff or whatever. Like I want to, I guess I just saw it as like a way to reach somebody who like might not have ever read anything but this. Like, you know what I mean? Like when you're in a small town, like you don't necessarily have access to like, I don't know, more like feminist, more queer stuff, more trauma informed stuff. And I just like thought, oh, this could be rad. And so, doing that was so cool. I think also because like that was like Cosmo was really my first experience with having a byline and having my name attached to my work. And then like the craziest thing that still blows my mind, but I'm a bit more used to it now, which is so many strangers on the internet being like, oh my God, she is me. She like says the things that I think. She is like, most relatable person. I was like, what? Like, so I have never felt like I related to anybody. I had always felt like the biggest outsider. And so it was a real trip to like have that kind of happen. So I think like, so that was actually my journey really, it was like, that was something that just like kind of came along the way. And it was interesting too, because then when you're in that space, I was an outsider in that way too. Like all my coworkers were like, went to college, knew they were going to do this, got the internship, did it the right way. Nobody told me how to do any of that. Right. So like I wasn't on that like track.
Mhm.
So it was like I just was the right person to do this thing. And yeah, it was interesting, but definitely wasn't the like, I'm going to go into magazines. Like I wanted to be Lucille Ball. So it's like, yeah.
It's funny. I think like you and I are roughly contemporaries. I don't know if anyone saw that weird thumbs up thing that just happened on my computer. I don't know what that is. But that was just weird. That might
A
just be a
ghost
Mac
was
thing.
like, yeah, that was a
Yeah.
great sentence.
Yeah, they were just projecting. It's like a kind of oral temporal whatever. But I
Yeah.
want to say like you and I are approximately, I think, contemporaries. I also started out with like the blogging stuff. I remember now that you were writing for The Onion, which has always been like a pie in the sky dream that I had. So I was always like very like, oh man, how does that actually operate? And so hearing about the internal structure of it, hopefully it's gonna be better under this new system. So the way
Yeah,
you know. But I,
totally.
I do love your stuff. When I go online, I'm always like, okay, time to find out about attachment theory from from Lane. I mean, how did you come up with or how did it develop rather, the brand of what you talk about online? Like you said, you're a multi-hyphenate, which makes it kind of hard sometimes to pin down. And in this era of like, you kind of have to be one kind of content to make it on YouTube. You have to be one kind of thing. How
Yeah.
did you kind of uh, navigate that trajectory?
Yeah, I hate the one kind of thing content. I think it's so, so limiting. I mean, there are some people, a lot of, I can't speak for these people. I don't know, but at least it's like outside of it, there are so many content creators where I'm like, oh, this really is like all you ever want to talk about, all you ever I don't feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to me and like the mental health stuff, to be totally honest, I do wonder sometimes, well, okay, not to get ahead of myself. I started reading about attachment theory and things like that on like my own journey to like, heal and like recover from a lot of shit. And it's like started looking at that and I think one of the things really I started talking about it a little bit in How to Be Alone in my first book and then um started the next point for me was during the pandemic. I like got on TikTok because like I had planned this like huge Tinder live tour by myself for 40 cities, which like is wild that like I put that together myself. And then it got canceled by the pandemic completely. And I was like, this is so heartbreaking. Not only like I don't know what I'm going to do for work or like bills or whatever, but like, God, I worked so hard on that. And like, what do you do with like all that time? You're just like, it's just gone now, I guess. And you like put so much of that work into it because you're like, well, it's gonna like, it's gonna result in something. And then the pandemic was just like, no, it's not. So during that time, I like got on TikTok and was like making different things like that. And I think what was exciting about it for me is a lot of the time a lot of when we learn about these relational things and these terms that we like usually just hear if you have access to an incredible therapist, which like congrats. It's so hard to find one and one that takes your insurance, like please.
Yeah.
It's very I don't think people talk about that enough. Like it's very easy to just be like, oh my God, like get a therapist. And it's like you do know a lot of therapists are not good, right? Or totally not accessible. Can we talk about that? Like, stop talking about it like it's down the street and people are just being stupid. That's not,
Yeah.
no. So, I also like the way my brain works. I don't, a lot of times when I read, more like very clinical books that are like written by a therapist or a psychotherapist or whatever it is, psychologist, my brain's kind of like, what? I just like it's so I don't know, just something about the clinical text and my ADHD do not mix. And so the more I started looking into it and kind of parsing this information, I realized something I'm really good at is if like, okay, taking what I learned from Cosmo of like, okay, I'm really good at putting things into words where people are like, yes, I get it. That's really relatable to me. So I was like, okay, how can I share the ways that I've taken this information and been able to metabolize it in a way that's super helpful for me that like just reading this very medical text did not help me. You know what I mean? So it was like, oh, how can I like make this funny and make this really helpful to people? Um, and so that's really what I started doing. And it's like and also something too that I feel, and not every like therapist or person who talks about attachment theory or any of this stuff has to have lived it.
Hmm.
You don't have to. That's fair. But I think there's a real benefit to somebody who's talking to you about these things and they've lived all of them. I've had every insecure attachment style. I've been through every single, like, I've had avoidant, I've had anxious avoidant. I'm partially secure now, which is a big win.
Oh,
I
congratulations.
know it's a big
Yeah.
brag, right? But
No,
I'll
it's
take
huge.
it. It's huge. It's so huge. So I feel like there's an extra, it's like I don't want to compare the two, but I say that because I think sometimes people are like, no one should talk about these things unless you're a therapist. I'm like, well, one, not all therapists are good. Even some therapists could talk about it and be really bad at this or harmful or like that exists. It really does. And then also like unless you're like actively harming anybody or like trying to get somebody to join your cult, I don't think there's anything wrong with somebody who's who's really lived this talking about it. I think there's benefit to both. Yeah.
But I think one of the interesting things you do too, and we'll probably get Eric to make a little comp clip of this real quick, is
Yeah.
is that you're really great at like, taking like these ideas and translating them specifically via memes, via TikTok dances, like there's kind of an Instagram and all these things. You're able to translate or like, express these things in ways that are visual, they're audio based, they're not all just like you sitting and talking at a camera, which is one of these great features, I think, of the modern age. So I think that's one
Yeah.
part that's really cool. It does make it like kind of universally understandable, like if you break it down in kind of a memeified, for lack of a better word, format.
Yeah.
I did want to talk about Tinder Live for a second because the time I went to
Yeah.
the show, I'm so excited to see it this
Yeah.
Wednesday. But the time I went to go see the show, you actually matched with somebody in the audience, I believe. It's like so.
Oh my gosh, which one was that? Was that with where David Cross was there and it was the guy's birthday?
Yes.
It was.
Yeah.
What a magical show. I'm so psyched you were there for that one. That was incredible. And then David Cross took this guy, like the guy, we invited the guy up on the stage.
Yeah.
He's so nice. David Cross took the guy's gift. He was like, what did you do? Did you bring something for Lane? He takes the guy's gift, gives it to me, and he was like, oh, that was my birthday gift. And I was like, okay, take it back. I'm not gonna like steal your birthday gift. But it was very funny that David was like, oh, this is for Lane. Here you go.
Yeah.
I was
It's
like,
it was
cool.
also the one I think where you matched with somebody who had this 9/11 conspiracy theorist and you said
Yes.
something about like my burning bush. It was just the funniest thing I've ever seen. So yeah, I just want to talk a little bit more about that because that is taking something that is fundamentally online and very much like this
Yeah.
thing that we only kind of like are very distant and removed from because it is this thing we scroll by on our phones that we kind of engage as is like almost like a passive habit and turning it into like a viscerally human, having everyone on stage, having a panel of guests. I mean, what
Yeah.
there, not to unpack the genius of that, but like, what has been some
Yeah.
of the reactions or evolutions of that format?
I had always been somebody who like just met people online more than I did in public spaces in that way. Like I can be very extroverted in that I'm a performer, but like tend to be fairly like anxious, fairly shy, fairly nervous in my own head. So like I was very adept at like meeting people online in this way. And I knew very well how alienating and weird it is. Like it's great, but all these things, it's like just getting weird messages, or it's like suddenly it just takes a real dark turn, or like you show up for the date and it's going well. And they're like, I actually live with my girlfriend. We're just going through a weird patch. And you're like, why are you here? Like, I just knew how like lonely and exhausting and honestly, sometimes even like dangerous it can be and all these things. And so when Tinder hit, I was like, oh, this is because I think Tinder made it so much faster, really, where like, and it gamified it. It really
Yeah.
did. So it Tinder gamified itself, really. And that was, I'm sure a huge part of what made it successful. So then it was like, oh, can I gamify this to make it a comedy show? Because that, I think for me, what I really wanted to do is I wanted to take something that like I knew because it was literally the first night that I used Tinder that I came up with the idea for Tinder Live. And I immediately, because of my other, uses of this space, really similar spaces, I was like, okay, I bet most people who are on this, when you use something like that, you're probably thinking you're the only one who's getting really weird profiles, that it's like
Mm-hmm.
directed at you. It's like personal somehow. Like there's some like hotter, richer, whatever, younger, older, whatever it is in your head that that you think is better, who's like getting all the good matches, and you're like
Mm-hmm.
left with the scum. And I was like, no, I want to do this to show that everybody is getting this. This is not a personal thing. Everybody's getting these weird messages, these weird matches, these like people who don't really talk, who aren't really here to meet you, who are like saying weird stuff to you, because it's so easy for all of us, but I think especially for women, to feel like, "Ugh, this is just happening to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's somebody who like is protected from all of this, and I guess I deserve the dregs. I can never, whatever." And
Yes.
I just wanted to take it out of that and make it like, no. And then also, I also wanted there to be something where I thought it would be cool, and I don't know, I didn't like think this through in this way. I wasn't like plotted out, but I thought it'd be really fucking cool to have a woman on stage be completely in her own fucking power in this situation, because usually you
Mm-hmm.
feel so powerless. We all feel so powerless on these apps, most of us, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And you feel like, oh, I got to really make them like me. And I don't know if I'm okay, it's okay to think that this is kind of weird that they said this. I'm going to roll with it. All these things where we like kind of hide ourselves or mold ourselves because we want to be chosen. And I was like, I think it'd be really badass to like get up there, and because this is my show, because this is not my personal life, to be able to be like, no, if somebody's being fucking weird, like I can take that and run with it in a place that is powerful and like freeing and cathartic and funny, instead of, if I did it on my own in my personal life, it would probably just be exhausting and make me really mad, I think there's something powerful about that. And I know I've heard from so many people, so many women who are like, oh my God, like you make me real. Like I watched Tinder Live and I'm like, oh, I don't have to take it this seriously. I don't have
Mm-hmm.
to like worry that I'm not doing the perfect thing. Like you can kind of just say whatever and it's fine. And I was like, yeah, that's a really good takeaway.
Yeah, the value of that is really because, as we've just discovered in the community space of like the online culture for the last few years, is that the isolation is really the biggest issue of like being online. Is that you feel,
Yeah.
like you said, it's very personalized. Everything that you do is very personalized. The algorithm that's being fed to you is personalized, so you think that it's just like a big me problem. And having the ability to reach out to people and say like, hey, this is something that we all kind of experience, and it's like not life or death. You can kind of get past it. It's like a really
Yeah.
important
Oh, sorry.
value. And what's really interesting is, the fact that I believe, the first book, How to Be Alone, was published pre-pandemic, like correct, and then
Yes.
and
Yeah.
just How to Find People was published post-pandemic, and that is such a sort of
Yeah.
huge shift in like what that means, just the perspective of
Right.
like what you're speaking to. I guess yeah,
Yeah.
like how did that influence you at all with like the show in terms of like getting back to live crowds and getting back to like what that meant for people coming out of an era where like we took that for granted, and we learned the hard way how important it was to be amongst people, and yeah, then bridging that gap between online to live event is such a big thing that we're seeing now from most creators. Yeah, did that influence your sort of perspective on like how you approach that with a live audience post pandemic?
Yeah. I mean, if you saw my vigorous nodding that whole time, yeah. Yeah, totally. Because it's like, and it's interesting because when the pandemic hit, I immediately started, I couldn't, honestly, as a pretty introverted, kind of socially anxious person, more than people would guess, live shows were my community. That was my community outside, like in the real world sense. You can have online community, but try as we might, we need at least a little bit of that in-person community. We just do, and if I could not need it, I probably would. But we need it. And for me, it was perfect because it was like I'm sharing this thing and it's so interactive, and you have people in the audience being like, that's my brother, and you're like, what? Like it was just this perfect kind of shared experience that would really, and it was, to be honest, it was really where I got so much of like my joy and like what kind of like replenishment, even for the month where it was just like if shit was really tough in my life, I'd be like, okay, well, I have a Tinder live show next week. It's gonna be okay. Because it was, I think, as like healing and fun and like exciting for me as it was for the audience. So it's like it meant so much to me. It really was like kind of a lifeline too sometimes. So like when I couldn't do that, I didn't know how to live. Like I'd been doing it monthly for years. And it was also like, you know, uh the most like stable thing that I had going on at that time. So I was just like, oh, this sucks. It really was just like losing your job and losing all your friends and losing like kind of your purpose. So as soon as the pandemic hit, something in me, just a switch flipped and I was like, I'm going to do a live stream show. And I did a live stream show on Twitch called How to Be Alone. And what I did was I had this 80s board game called Heartthrob and it was amazing. And I had just like, I had bought it on eBay like years ago and I improvised an 80s horror movie based on these teenage boys from the 80s. And
Oh
I'd be
my
like, all
God.
right, like, and it ended up like the game ended up being called Murder or Fudge. And that happened because and we would like vote and it was like this improvised kind of murder mystery, but also with like a bit of nostalgia and these like very silly teenage boys from this game that was like for girls
Mhm.
specifically. But it was mainly because I really missed this fudge that I used to get in the East Village before the pandemic, and I couldn't get it. So I had started talking about fudge a lot, and so it just worked its way into the game. But it was so fun and it was interactive and like people, it's funny too, because I was in New York when the pandemic happened, and I don't know if it was LA too, that whole time is a blur, but when the pandemic hit, it seemed like it was New York first that like we
Yep.
really knew before anybody else that like what was happening. And I
Yep.
was watching my tour get canceled and I'm like tweeting about this and like nobody knew what I was talking about. They just kind of talked to you like it was just you. And they were
Yep.
like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And so like people rallied, thank God. And they were like, oh my God, yeah, I'll watch this. And like and I made the show donation only. So like anybody could watch all this stuff. People really rallied. And then you start to see it expand and you're just like, yeah, this is what I've been trying to tell you. I wish I hadn't been one of the people who got here first, but like this is really intense. So
Yeah.
was doing that. And it's funny, I actually like people kept being like, do Tinder live stream. I was honestly too heartbroken to do it. I was
Mhm.
so doing it live stream just wasn't the same. It wasn't
Mhm.
it like it took me months and months to be able to do a live streaming Tinder live. And I think it was when like, another wave of tour dates that I thought I'd be able to do because it was like dying down, we were told. And then I couldn't. I was like, all right, fuck it. And did it and was like, okay, just because at the beginning of the pandemic, you didn't know how long it was gonna last. So some part of me was like, I don't want to fucking do it live stream. I want to do it live. And we're
Mhm.
being told this is only going to last a little while. So I
Mhm.
just want to wait till then. But if I had known this was going to last years, I probably would have done it sooner, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, because we had a very similar experience, not directly from us, but from a show that we were a part of. We were part of a
Yeah.
movie trivia show called the Movie Trivia Schmodown for several years, and
Yeah.
that was a live setting. It was in a live set for most matches. We did live events at certain
Yeah.
venues. So prior to that, and when the pandemic hit, we had to go online. The show had to shift to being an online formatted show,
Yeah.
and the creator Christian Harloff would always advocate. He's like, online is great, but it doesn't have the same energy as
Mhm.
being in a crowd, being with the people, and sort
Yeah.
of feeding off of that. And yeah, did you feel again any shift once you got back to live events and were you able to sort of feed off that crowd again?
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, being able to just like get that sort of like you
Yeah.
said, like that immediate sort of response from like the crowd. Like what was that like? I guess coming back out of it and like just having the energy of a crowd again.
Oh, it's the best. There's no better feeling. And it's like, whatever I'm doing. Cause that was the other thing too, where it was like, I also had like my band's album was supposed to come out during the pandemic and it was stalled by that too. And like, hopefully it'll be able to be out soon, but like all that stuff and like playing with my bandmates, it was like, I can't do that either. Like all of my community revolved around live shows, all of
Mhm.
it. So it was, and my like income. So it was like, well, okay. Painted myself into a corner that you didn't know existed, right?
Yep.
Because like there is no problem with that until something like that happens. And then which is like hopefully a once in a lifetime thing, really. But when we did the first show back, it was like, I don't know if I cry. I can't remember if I like cried. I remember thinking like, I'm definitely gonna cry. I'm definitely gonna cry. But then I think what happened was when I got on stage, I had been crying enough not getting to do the show that when I did the show, I was nothing but happy. Like I really thought I would get on stage and just be like, do you guys know what just happened? But no, I was just like, fuck yes. And we were all like, yeah. It was just like nothing but joy. I'd done enough crying. It was, crying over. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the best feeling.
Well, I wanted to actually ask you about that because you are doing
Yeah.
Tinder Live now as a live stream as well as a actual show. So and that's something I'm imagining was born out of the
Yeah.
pandemic. I mean, how much of a learning curve was there? I think I might know the answer to this, but like of having to figure out how to do a live stream or how to work this tech and being able to do like the show you were just talking about with Heartthrob. Because now you also have a podcast. You become entirely like able to be online and
Yeah.
be able to like, we all had to kind of learn how to become somewhat self-sustainable making online content, but that's also
Yeah.
shifted since post-pandemic. So I'm just interested with your experience in that.
Yeah. So there's two sides to that actually, because it's like there's Twitch was like not very hard to transition over to. I was like, sure. The hard thing was I guess like the only thing about Twitch is that, and I use some other platforms and stuff too along the way during the pandemic. You try different things out. The hardest thing for me was like, Tinder Live, one of the things we do is it's like, I'm like, vote right or left, which way should we swipe? And I was so used to hearing like 35, people be like left and then like 200 people be like right and like all at once, I was used to that. I was like an old-timey game show like the clap-o-meter. Like I was kind of used to being like, okay, I can hear this. It's, whatever. I guess that's more visual, but still some kind of like audible cue. And now I'm having to like go through the chat and like roughly count how many people say right. Like it's just such a different vibe. And I was like, okay, I really just tried not to focus on the ways it was different and just be grateful it still got to exist at all, even if this is like a different form. But like I do miss people. I missed hearing people. And but I would encourage people, I'd be like, okay, when you're in the chat, like as silly as it might sound, like feel free, like if you're laughing, like write ha ha or whatever, because it's crazy not to be able to hear instant laughs as a comedian. It's so crazy. You're used to that. And like how many laughs you get, you like feed off that laughter and like helps your energy for the next joke. And like not having that is so weird. But I will say the hardest thing, what I'm excited about the show on Wednesday is that Dynasty Typewriter has its own live stream setup. Not every venue has adopted that.
Yeah.
So, and the hardest thing was, my monthly show in Brooklyn at the venue, like they didn't end up doing that. So then I had to like buy a camera, set up a live stream, set it up myself in the back. I didn't have anybody who could like watch it the whole time because you're doing all this shit DIY. You're doing it by yourself. You can't afford to like have tech doing it. And, for all if you have like 10 people show up, that would probably cover what you paid them. So then it's like not worth it to the live stream, So it's just very strange. And then sometimes the live stream would mess up and then you have to refund everybody. And then like all that work was for nothing. That part sucked. Like trying to set up your own tech at a live show. Doing it on my laptop, that's not hard. I mean, maybe you have a technical difficulty, but mostly it's not hard. But like setting up a camera and audio and oh God, that was, I don't miss that. So now when I'm at a venue that has the live stream capability, it's so much better because I'm just like, oh, you like professionally do this and you have somebody there to like sit with it. So that's very nice.
I was going to ask, because the the live streaming, like you said, doing it on Twitch, doing it on your own is like its own sort of animal where like, the responsibility feels a little bit less because like, you can kind of like get through it. And during the, pandemic era, that's when everyone was trying to figure out things. So I think everyone had a lot more patience with like people trying to experiment with the tools and stuff. And like during that time,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, like, you were doing it because you kind of just wanted to have like a way to reach out to people, and you're doing like the board game and things like that. For many years before that, it was told like content creation, was like a way to like make it big, to like, make money and to like live like a life, online. But then when the pandemic hit, everyone was like doing it just to connect with people. And it was like just the need
Yeah.
to like be able to have an audience to like reach out so you don't feel alone. I guess, and now that we're past that, it does feel like we're sort of veering back into the old way where it's like, okay, now you can, this is how you capitalize on it. But I think at the core of like what we sort of stand for here is trying to remind people that it is about the community, it's about the audience that you reach out to, and sort of that connection that you make that sort of drives the motivation behind having any sort of like meaningful channel. I guess, well,
Yeah.
yeah, what would you say to anyone who like did that, you feel should probably keep that in mind, that should appreciate having an audience and like what the audience does for them and what you're doing for the audience itself?
Part of it too is like, yeah, I think it's so important. I guess I'm gonna like answer a roundabout way and then directly, but like it's so weird now. I just want to say that it's so weird now. It was always weird. And like the thing we were told is like, if you get X number of followers, you're gonna like make a ton of money and like get brand deals. And like that, I don't know, that was like hard to come by for me. Like I feel like the goalposts kept shifting is what I saw. Like
Mm-hmm.
I have plenty of friends who like made so much money on social media, and like that was not my experience. I made it, I think, in a more roundabout way where it was like my TikTok would go viral and then someone would come see my live show. But like I wasn't like, I didn't know how, I guess I'll say, because I'm not making it sound like I was too cool for it. I don't know. Like I would have loved to be making like so much money on social media and have that be a thing, because like I'm making these viral tweets, I'm making these viral, things that, people look at as memes or whatever. But it was like I didn't know how to like get paid for that stuff. I didn't know how that worked. And it was always a big frustration because that's what we're told. You should be getting paid a ton of money to do this work. And it
Right.
is work. It is writing. It is. And, the kind of like, I don't know. It feels important to talk about like, there's two sides to this. This is work. And I do think that there is something that's like happened with social media. I've seen some people, I know, I feel like Drew knows where I'm going with this. So it's like, I think there's this idea of just like, oh, whatever, it's just a tweet, it's just a meme, it's just a post. No one owns it. It's anybody's. We'll remove the credit. Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? I follow this account that crops everybody's credits and makes millions of dollars a month. Like that is trash. That is absolute garbage. That is so flawed. Like this is an art, and we deserve to own our work. We deserve to
Mm-hmm.
own our art, and we deserve to be paid for doing our art,
Mm-hmm.
especially if somebody's going to take it and get way more views because they put it on their meme page. Like it's a really flawed system. So I wanted to say that because, and I know this isn't what you were saying, but like I don't want people to feel like they don't deserve to be paid for it, or that we shouldn't be paid for it and they should just love the community. No, I think both exist. I don't think that we should look at it through I think it is heartless and icky to look at it just through a capitalistic view of like
Mm-hmm.
it just money or nothing. I think that's wrong. But I also think that if this is valuable, then you deserve to reap the rewards of your value.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's so that's something that's very important to me, and like still trying to figure out in the current landscape of that. It's very strange. But at the same time, I will say when I have been rightly frustrated by that, I look at like I look for kind of what I was saying earlier, where it's like, okay, maybe you're not, getting flown around in a fucking private jet, and you're not, getting like 8 million a month in brand deals or whatever. But like, I go on tour with Tinder Live, and it's like all these people are like, oh my God, I first found you from your TikToks during the pandemic, or like my girl, your tweets are so funny. And then I came to see your live show and I loved that. And like, or like, I followed you on Twitter for a long time and then I read your book and it's my favorite thing. So like, I try to look at it like that, where it's like, and again, it's like, it's holding both parts of that, where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you kind of want both. I think that's what I'm trying to get at, because
Yeah.
the people I know who like were able to cash in on that era of like, do you have 10,000 followers or 20,000, when the barometer was so much lower than it is now, and you could get so much money. The friends of mine who were able to cash in on that, like that could go away at any time. Those are just
Yeah.
brand deals. But like I try to look at it like, okay, yeah, it sucks you couldn't get those or didn't get those or whatever the hell. But like you have people who like I have people in my DMs who are like, hey, if you're ever in town and you need to stay at my place, or like if you ever need to get away, I have a cool vacation house. You're welcome to use it. And I'm like, what? Like this is so much bigger than like some one-off brand deal. There's like people who like I'm like I hesitate to say this, but people have said it, so I'll just say it. But like who I'm like family to them. I'm like a friend to them. They like deeply care about me. And that's a powerful thing. And that's, you want to be paid as well because we have to live in capitalism. We just have to. So you want to be paid for your work. But at the same time, it's like, the biggest part of that I wanted is I wanted to connect people. I wanted to make people laugh. I wanted to give people a break from how hard it can be to be a person sometimes. Like that was all stuff I really wanted to do. So it's like seeing that you've achieved that is like, don't negate that. And then, when the pandemic happened, and I was like, well, there were so many people who were like, yeah, I'm going to show up for your live streams. I'm going to come to your live streams. I'm going to support you in this way. Like, yeah, that's a really, it just might look different than what you think it should look like, I guess is what I'll say.
I mean, it really hits onto one of our main topics here that we really care about, Passionfruit, which is like creative labor is like work. Like it is the weird thing to call something a creator economy and talk about all this money that's in it, but then not recognize that you just act like people are products or people are brands or people are content, and not that people are the labor that goes behind making that content, because that shouldn't be monetized. You just need to be monetized as the product of you. And the end is always this end goal of presenting yourself. So these platforms get a lot of money because that's where all the money is actually going into, injection into platforms and distribution, separating the worker from the means of the distribution. Like that's really what this is about. And it's about this trap, I think. It's like this real trap where it's like community is starting to become like one of those words too, where it becomes like, well, it's all about making money off your community. And it's like, no, that's not really. I'm not a person with a lot of money. Creators aren't generally people who have a ton of money, unless they've, as a career creator, you don't really have a sustainable work-life balance. Like you have to keep moving. And your community, like you might have some people in a community who make money, but the idea of commodifying exactly what you were talking about, those relationships, is really to me like kind of gross and icky, and a misunderstanding of a misappropriation of the word community, which can also mean a community of creators coming together and being like, here's my shared experience, like, and being able to share resources. And it is sort of like, I think like almost like a, not anti-capitalist, because I think there's still money involved, but like there is a different model than late stage capitalism of like post crypto boom, AI, like, cashing in on the people who like your content or like you as a person.
Yeah. And I think it's really been finding a middle ground, because it's like, when I launched my podcast, I had pitched a podcast around, and at the time, I had a really rough time with that experience, with like my past experiences. I would pitch podcasts, and then I won't name networks, but the networks would be like, these are all the best ideas we've ever heard, and then they wouldn't make them, and then they would make them with a man, and I was like, this sucks. And yeah, it was so cliche and just and really messed up. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to make one just on Patreon. I'm going to do it like by the people, for the people, like you're investing in me doing this. And I remember like when I first started it, there was like, one or two people who were like, why are you charging for this? Why isn't this free? And I like, because you're like it's like, how do you explain the way so much of this industry works? Like nothing is free, actually. It's only free because these companies, and most of these, especially, even a few years ago, most of these podcasts are hosted by men. It's going to be straight guys. It's going to be this, or it's going to be like kind of toxic straight ladies who are saying really toxic shit. This is where they're putting their money. And that's why you can get a quote unquote free podcast. If you are somebody who is doing something that's different and is outside of that box, they might not be able to make money through a traditional way in doing that. So if you want something like that and you don't want them to have like horrible toxic ads the whole time, you are contributing to them doing it. You are paying them a little bit of money, and then a bunch of people are all making this happen. Kind of, I always joke that it's like a gayer PBS. It's like this is by you, for you. It's like that, is what it is. And so it's like, you know, it only exists because you want it to exist and I do this. But it's like, it's so hard to explain that to people because it's like, no, I'm not trying to like commodify my audience. Like I don't look at it that way to like a ridiculous, like an almost self-defeating way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you're like, how do I like, I don't want to be a part of that, but also like, I deserve to like not be stressed about where I'm going to get my next meal and like all these things. And if we combine our resources to chip in to make something happen, that's like how things should work. And that is an anti-capitalist way to do it. That actually is. So it's like, because you know, people have to live and we can't escape that. But making these spaces exist through through community and through everybody being like, sure, I have $5, I have $5. Like so many punk shows that I did in high school, that's how those work too.
Yep.
That is anti-capitalist. It's not like, I think people think that like anti-capitalist means like nobody spends money. It's like, no, that's not what that means. It's just like, it's like, how are we like tying working class people to their labor? How are we tying like their or not, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tying, you know, valuing labor, having the money go directly to the worker. Like that's what we are trying to do. And that is, you know, where it's not like a corporation's like, we'll give you a little bit
Yeah.
of what you had. And it's like, no, that's what it is. But I think there's like a confusion people have about that. And it's like, no, it's people just, especially if you're working class and you're working class creator, working class artist, it's like, yeah, that's if someone's working outside the system, then you need community all the more, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's totally true. And I think, you know, the funny thing is watching even those, you know, kind of big name toxic people because of the on-air ad reads. I'm not sure if you saw the cast media thing, but like, turns out they didn't get their
No.
money either because like the middleman between the
No
podcast
way.
on-air ad reads and the people that were taking the money to give to them were like, just decided to go broke. So the company, like all these people lost. Whitney Cummings, I think, lost almost like several $100,000. Like there were
I
people that were
didn't know
losing.
this.
Yeah, it was this huge thing. So like even when the system works for the 1% of people who have these things, a lot of our
Yeah.
friends who have worked with this company lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in on-air ad reads, money that they had actually put their labor towards and had done the
Yeah.
trades. So it's crazy to me that like, you know, I'd worked a little bit in the covering the tech scene here in
Wow.
LA right when that kind of
Yeah.
exploded. And like now that we're into AI, I just feel like it's the same investment capital being injected into not the creators, but the things that are sort of tertiary to creators that like creators need to get a bigger audience or creators, you know, distribute. And I'm just like, man, I wish the AI thing had happened maybe like 2 months earlier. So it could have hit the crypto market and that could have been like it instead of like trying to hit it on content because AI is never going to be able to really replace what we're talking about here, which is community, but also people's labor in creating original
Yeah.
concepts.
Yeah. And it's, oh man, that's such a, I actually didn't hear about that. That's such a bummer. But it's like, it's that thing where, you know, it's so hard. You're like, how much do you talk to your audience about that? Because it does feel like, you know, and you're like, more so, you know, how do you talk to your community about that? Because it's like, you don't want to sound like you're like whining or complaining or I don't know or whatever. But it's like, but I do want people to know, like, I think a lot of people, maybe even most people, like want to know what supports you most. Like the cutest thing that I hear sometimes is people are like, what's the best place for me to buy your book where you get the most money? And like the truth is it's all kind of same that way. The same that way, really. I mean, it's like always buy it from an independent bookstore because it supports the independent bookstore and like that's what you want to do. But like, but even somebody asking you that question reminds me that like people want to support people who are making art,
Yep.
especially when they don't come, they're not somebody from a crazy wealthy family who like who doesn't care if they make money because they have, you know, crazy money that's just from their parents. But like when they know that this is what you're doing and you're just another person, you know, it's so interesting. I heard somebody say that it's like so many like working class artists like we have more in common with like plumbers than we
Yep.
do, you know, a CEO or like an A-list star or whatever. It's like
Mm-hmm.
we're freelancers. We're general contractors. It's like we're just, you know, so it's like, but it's deceptive because you see somebody has a lot of followers. You see somebody, oh my God, this tweet was retweeted 3 million times, whatever. And you think somehow that like reflects on how much they're making. And the thing is, it should, but it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't always, you
Yeah.
know?
I mean, welcome to, yeah, like the creator economy, the one economy that operates without a labor force somehow, magically.
Yep.
I do want to be cognizant of time, Lane. It was so
Sure.
great to have you.
Yeah.
But speaking of, I am just
Yeah.
looking at your website now. I'm going to buy the shirt "Girls Only Want One Thing," and it's the Practical Magic House tee.
Yeah.
Because as a
Thank you.
movie,
I started hand drawing all of my merch, and it was funny because, and that was another thing that like that only happened because I always loved art and I just was not encouraged enough to do that as a kid, and like uh really loved like drawing and painting and like won awards and stuff as a kid, but it was
oh
just
wow,
not encouraged. Nobody really cared. So I kind of just, I didn't have that. And so I was kind of like, whatever. I don't know. It's probably a fluke or whatever. And then a friend of mine, two friends of mine actually, who are like working like, visual artists in that way. They're like, no, you're really good at this. You have a really cool like drawing style and writing style. And like, you can do this. And like, gave me that encouragement that like I didn't have as a kid to like, no. And honestly, Tinder Live came about the same way where it was like my roommates being like, that's genius. Go make Tinder Live a show. And I was like, okay. So it's people who, if you have that in your life where like people are always encouraging what you're doing, please don't forget how lucky you are. Like not everybody has that. And some people, it takes us a really long time to ever have that. But when you do have it, it's like, I'm really grateful for any time I've had it. So, and the more your community builds, it's so nice when, even that moment of like every time someone's like, "Oh my God, this shirt's really cool. I'm gonna get one." And I'm like that is further encouragement of like, yes, continue to draw, continue to do these. So, community's great.
Yeah.
well, I was going to ask last question before we go
Yeah,
is,
no, it's fine.
do you have any advice for content creators or people who are just trying to break in, trying to do one kind of thing? Maybe it's not working. Maybe it's like they're not making any money from it. Like, what would you advise for these people about how to manage that work-life balance?
Oh, it's like I'm sure there is like a almost AI response to that. It's like, well, this is the response.
Yeah.
I don't have the like little PR response for that, which I wouldn't want anyway.
No.
But stick to what you love as much as you can. Maybe you can tweak it a little bit to make it look a little different. I think that's what it kind of took me because I never really compromised my vision for things. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, maybe I should have just so I could have like gotten paid some more. That would have been nice. But I just really was like, no, I know what I think is good. I know what I don't want to put out into this world. I know what I don't want to be a part of. I knew that something like cheaper and shittier and like kind of low key harmful would do better.
Mhm.
I just didn't want to do it. And, I guess what I would say is if you can do it and like get a check and you can sleep at night, like I guess go off. But if you can't, just keep doing what you think is right because it really is valid. It's a harder path. It's definitely a harder path. But I don't know. I know that like I've helped a lot of people and I know that like a lot of people feel really seen because I exist. And like I think that's better than just like a cheap, shitty check from doing something that made the world a little worse.
Oh,
So,
agree so hard. Lane, so
yeah.
people, if you, we're gonna put a link in the description, but your show, Tinder Live, it should be going on tonight. People can buy live stream tickets. Where else can people find you?
Yeah, and I'll say too, if you can't make it tonight or like you're like, oh no, I'm listening to this on Thursday, the live stream tickets will be available for up to 7 days after the show, which is rad. And I'm also getting ready to put up a bunch of like old live stream and live show like tickets and stuff like that on my
Oh,
website. So my
cool.
website is, yeah, I've just been tired. That's really all. It's definitely all by yourself. Lanemore.org is my website that has all my tour dates. Also, if you're somewhere outside of LA, I'm doing a huge national tour this fall. I'm going all around the country. And then so yeah, you can get tickets to any of those shows, see where I'm coming. There's links to the podcast where you can listen to it and subscribe and do all that stuff. And all my merch and t-shirts and stickers are there. And since I mentioned my band and my music, it's all there. There's photos and I'm at Hello Lane Moore on TikTok and Twitter. I will never call it X, by the way.
No,
I don't know if I'm alone in that. I will never call it X.
no.
Twitter and Instagram and TikTok, and I am on Threads, as Drew and I were talking about for the show. They made one of like 300 people. Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you so much for having for being on today, Lane. We really appreciate it. You're one of the just big people we've always wanted to talk to, and it's just so great to see you again.
I didn't know that. That's so nice. That's cool.
And I can't wait to see you here in LA. Coming to the show. For us, you can find us. Eric, why don't you actually do the post roll? You're very good at that.
You can find us at Passionfruit for us across social media. You can find me at Nerdchronic across social media. Find Drew Grant at Video Drew across social media. You'll find us on Patreon and Discord, and our links below. And I guess we'll catch everyone next.
Yeah, if you're watching us on YouTube, you will find us at Passionfruit Creators. You're already here now, though, so thanks for being here. And yeah, we'll see you soon, guys. Bye.
3, 2,